Welcome to Our Life, everyone. A new season, a new beginning. And to kick off this new beginning, we're going to kick it off with domestic violence. The goal is to get an understanding of a life problem that we deal with every day and we hide. And also to answer that one question that everybody always asks, why you don't leave? So before we take a quick break and come back with my first guest, I want to give a removing the mask fact on domestic violence. In 1920, all states deemed, and they didn't even call it domestic violence, they said wife beating, was illegal for all states in 1920. But not until 1970 was domestic violence considered to be a serious crime. So I want you guys to meditate on that through the show. When we come back, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to have Ms. Barbara Hudson with me from Movette Productions, and she's going to come back and start peeling off her mask on domestic violence. So hang in there with me, and we'll be right back. We're back, everybody, and I'm coming back now with my first guest, which is Ms. Barbara Hudson from Movette Productions, and she'll be starting to peel off the mask on domestic violence. So please help me welcome my first guest, Ms. Barbara Hudson from Movette Productions. How are you, my friend?
I am wonderful, and it feels good to be back.
I'm glad you decided and had time to come and sit and talk to me about this. Let's just jump right into it.
Okay.
And because I'm big on peeling stuff off, so let's just start peeling.
Okay.
So tell me something. I'm a firm believer that women, we see stuff. We see stuff in advance, and we kind of ignore it. So when did you see the first sign where you had a behavior change with your significant other?
My first time was right before we got married. I discovered, but you have to understand, I was 17 when I got married.
Okay.
So I thought I was in love, and you know, he was an officer in the military, and I was infatuated with all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember there was a time that he took my engagement ring and threw it. And then he slapped me because I didn't answer a question in the manner that he thought that I was supposed to answer.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, looking back, did I think that was a sign? No.
You didn't.
I just thought he loved me, and I made him angry because my mother would say, you know, it's your fault. You have to do better.
Mm-hmm.
So in looking back now, I know that that was actually a sign.
Okay. So let's jump right in. And we've talked about this before. Long time ago, very, very long time ago. But tell us about the time that he tried to kill you. And is it safe to say numerous times?
There were numerous times, but this specific time was he, like I said, he was very violent. He was an alcoholic. He was very violent. And this one time he beat me so bad that I remember going to sleep. I just wanted to go to sleep. And we had a German Shepherd.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up that morning, and the German Shepherd was just barking and was crazy. And I was like, what is wrong with you? I was pregnant at the time with my daughter. And when I woke up, the bed was full of blood. So he rushed me to the hospital, but he'd already told me, you better not say anything. And that night before was when he tried to kill me. And so I lost my daughter. She died, and that was a really bad time, to where I knew then that he would kill me. And he told me on numerous times that he was going to kill. Nobody else could have you, so I will kill you.
So even with that incident and you losing a child, was that the breaking point, or that wasn't the breaking point?
No, that wasn't the breaking point, because you have to understand, when I was growing up as a young woman, my mother was, she was pretty interesting, but it was all about power. It was all about success.
Mm-hmm.
So me leaving the marriage was it wasn't something to do. I would become a failure in her eyes, and that was something that I really didn't want to do. The thing that really resonated with me and woke me up was when I realized that if he could do this to me, he could do this to my children.
Yeah.
And I was not going to allow that. So the fight in me, you know, and not knowing God in the manner that I know God now, but the fight in me and the prayers that covered me at that time was like, I got to get out of this because he's going to kill me. Because, you know, I'd wake up sometime and he would be at the head of the bed with a 357, you know, telling me, I'm going to blow your brains out. So I knew I had to do something. I just didn't know what that was. And I was afraid to be a failure in my mother's eyes.
So how many years did you stay?
I stayed 10 years.
And would you say, because this is a question that I'm going to ask most of the women, would you say that you stayed because the I'm going to say pressure that your mama put on you? Is that the main reason why you stayed 10 years?
I wanted,
what was,
you know,
what was
there were a lot of things. I mean, you know, I wanted the perfect family, you know, I wanted my kids to have their dad, you know, he was very successful, and those very prestigious type, we lived a prestigious life, and I just thought that I had to fit in because that's what I grew up thinking, you know. I had to live in excellence. In order to do that, I had to continue to stay married.
Yeah.
But there was just, you know, looking at my kids and seeing the pain. They were just babies, and there was no way, nobody else could help me. I had to help myself. So I had to leave. So I prepared to leave.
Okay. And out of all that pain, you did Faces Within the Mirror.
I did.
So tell us about this book.
That book there is of my life, and that book there was a healing mechanism for myself, and at the time that I was writing it, it became a healing mechanism for many, many people out there. And that book there told my life story, which God and I had a struggle with that because I was like, there's some things I don't want people to know. But as my life progressed, as I wrote the book, talked to my children about it, and they were okay, I did what I needed to do to be obedient to God. But that book there shows a lot of my pain from the rape, from the molestation, from the beatings, from, you know, me keeping myself, I thought at the time, safe, that I, you know, dated nothing but married men because I didn't have to get involved.
Yeah.
And they had to have money.
Attachment.
They had to have money, and, you know, so, but that book will also show you that one thing you never want is a whooping from God, because God woke me up in 2000 and almost took my life, and being in ICU for 8 months and dying. And I was like, oh, no, we can't do this one. We got to live, you know, we got to live. So Faces Within the Mirror is a story of not just my life, but many women that are afraid to express it. And it's a healing book.
And then you've also turned it into a video.
I did. I turned it into...
You better do it.
I turned it into a play, yes, and it coincides with the book.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Tell me quickly what Movet Entertainment has going on right now.
You know, I did stage plays with celebrities for many years.
Many years.
And now I am what you call a showrunner, and I work with We Network, OWN Network, VH1, all the major networks, and I find and produce shows for these networks. That's what I'm doing now.
You better do it. You better do it. Well, I want to say thank you so very much for coming and starting off the peeling process of taking the mask off, because I think with domestic violence, we hide it.
We do.
We hide it. Women hide it. The family hides it. Everybody hides it. So when we return, thank you so very much for being here. When we return, we'll be with our next guest so we can continue to peel off the mask on domestic violence and educate you as well on domestic violence. So we'll be right back. And we're back. Now, in this segment, we're going to educate ourselves a little bit, because also I think with domestic violence and when women are placed in this situation where they have to live day in and day out on a roller coaster almost with an individual. They don't know which way to turn or what is the best way, or they're being told go this way, go that way, and it's half the time not the correct information. So in this segment, we're going to get a little education on domestic violence. So my first guest with me will be Miss Brandy, and she's been an attorney. First of all, let's welcome Miss Brandy on. Welcome with me.
Thank you for having me.
You have been an attorney now for 4 years.
Yes.
And you work with crime victims.
Yes.
So we're gonna just jump into it. Give us the 101 class on what females should do according to the law when it comes to domestic violence, because this is my opinion. When you're in that situation and you call the police out, it's about, well, did he do you something, or he needs to do you something, or do the restraining order, you do the restraining order, all that. To me, that's a lot of rigmarole. When you see I have a black eye, my arm broke, you rushing me to the hospital, but you telling me, well, put a restraining order out of him, and if he pop up at your house 5 minutes later, we'll come pick him up. That doesn't sit well with me, especially in 2018. So give us the 101 basic class on what a female needs to do when they decide to reach out to the police and go further.
Actually, honestly, even though it doesn't sound great, but that is what you need to do, because you need to build a case. Like, you need to start building up a case. I tell my clients all the time, you know, definitely call 911 as soon as it happens. Call 911, you know, have the police come. A lot of times they will immediately arrest him. Once he's immediately arrested, then you can go to the district attorney's office, or the police will go with you, and then you can get a magistrate's emergency protective order. It's immediate. It happens right then and there. So they're going to have one in place. Then that lasts 60 to 91 days, depending on if a weapon was involved. If a weapon was involved, then it's going to last 91 days. If it was just like physical, he used his hands or whatever, then it's 61 days. So that's the start of the process. And then, yes, when he gets out of jail and he comes to you, you have that paper in hand. It's a protection. It's not great. It's not fun. We all know, you know, things could be better, but that is definitely the start. But when you have that in place, then if he comes back to your house, call 911 again so you can get arrested. But you're building your case, because then at that time, reach out to a friend, reach out to a lawyer, and let them help you go through. Now, I want a final protective order that lasts 2 years. And that's what you're trying to get to that process.
So let me ask you this, because in media and in the world today, they report domestic violence more for women. To me, and I haven't really looked up all the statistics, I think it is more women than men. But even when you have a man, because men are sometimes placed in that situation, and you come, police get to the house, it's a man being abused or beaten. Do they follow those same channels? Or, because I know when the police get there, you probably looked at it a little differently, you know, but do they follow those same channels as we as women would follow as well? So, because I want the men to also, I know I do a lot of stuff with women, but I want the men also to be educated, because you do have some men that are sometimes placed in that situation.
It's the exact same thing for men. The men need to do the same thing as the woman. The law is no different because it's for a woman or because it's for a man. I would tell a man the exact same thing.
That you would tell a woman.
Call the police, get your emergency protective order, your magistrate's protective order, go talk to a lawyer, or have, you know, you can go to TexasLawHelp.org here in Texas. It's created by lawyers. You can print out, go to the protective order toolkit, step by step.
So what would you say to women, what kind of plan would you give them if they decide they want to stay or return back? Because we see that. Until you're at a place where you know it's time to go, like Ms. Hudson spoke about, after 10 years, she decided, okay, it's time for me to go. Until you're at that place, what do you tell somebody?
What I tell my clients is, first of all, tell somebody. Find that close confidant, somebody you can tell, because you need to let somebody know that's what's going on. 2, if you do choose to stay in that situation And if he tends to get violent, know his, I'm not going to say know his trigger points, but know the level of violence, because that'll help you know which room you need to move to. Find you a safe place in your house to where you can go to if he starts gets upset, gets angry, and things like that. Then if you have children, never run to your children. Never run to your children. I've had clients that run to their children because they want to protect their children. He's not necessarily going after the children, he's going towards them, but you're putting your child in harm's way. And then you don't want to see your child see what's going on as well. And then too, if you can get to a phone, call 911. I'm always stressing, call 911. Because no matter what, yes, some police officers can be insensitive, but you're building a case.
Okay, we're going to press pause on that. We're going to press pause on call 911. When we return, we're going to have Miss Juanita Caesar with us, and we're going to add her in with Miss Brenda here, and we're going to continue on with this education segment of domestic violence. So when we come right back, we'll have Miss Juanita with us, and then we're going to put your play button back on, and we're going to continue to educate on removing the mask of domestic violence. So we'll be right back. We're back now, and I have Miss Juanita Caesar with me from Farmer Insurance. Thank you for being here. She's joining me and Brandy here, and we're going to continue to educate. And I'm going to do just like I told Brandy. Let's do a 101 class on life insurance. And can you tell us how important that is? And you know, someone brought it to my attention because I never looked at it that way. And they were like, you know, the women will stay, and in the event, God forbid, that something happens and they end up passing away due to domestic violence, where does that leave their children? And most of them do have little kids. Where do that leave their children? So give us a class on 101 basics of life insurance and how important that is.
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to be here today. I appreciate this opportunity to try and educate a little bit about life insurance for not only females, but men also. And maybe even more so because he might be the breadwinner. So it's important because, first of all, you love your family.
Yeah.
And you are taking care of their financial needs. And you have to make sure that whatever in the future, if they go to school or whatever, that the finances are there for them. Life insurance is is for the living. We have always been taught to have life insurance for when we die.
Yeah.
But it's for the living. And we need to think of it as for the living. If you're in a domestic violence situation and something happens to you and you're the breadwinner, or if you're the housekeeper, because the housekeeper gets paid pretty well if you're not here. And you have to know that the financial need of your family and your loved ones is met now and if something were to happen to you. Domestic violence seems to be one of the hottest things going in our criminal world right now.
Yeah.
And I have seen some terrible things that has happened, more so because individuals did not have insurance. I know of a couple that, you know, both of them died at the same time because he, you know, turned the gun on himself after shooting her. And they did not have life insurance. The children went to a family that really didn't want them.
How hard is it for someone dealing with domestic violence to put something like that in place?
It's not difficult because the
For the
insurance,
kids.
right, the children are not, it's very easy for the children themselves if you want to insure your children, which is a great thing to do as well. But for the parents, it's important that, you know, they hopefully go to an insurance agent or agency that they're already using And they already know of the family and know that they are healthy, know that there's, some questions on the application that they can help them with. But if not, if they go to someone like myself or any other agency that sells life
That's what I
insurance.
was just going to ask you. How would you advise them?
Yeah.
Because that's a sensitive topic.
Yes, it is.
So
yes,
it's
it is.
like.
And I know that topic very well.
That's
So with me, for me, it would be something I would sense immediately. And I would ask for both parents, if possible, to be there. And I would try and counsel them to the point where I realize what are the financial needs and what will be the financial needs if something were to happen to either of you. Which means if the husband or the wife passes away, we need to analyze what that difference is going to make in the household. And then try and figure out a good number. That would at least continue the lifestyle or help them to continue the lifestyle that they know, especially the children. Because it's sad that this happens to the adults, but the children has nothing to do with the decisions the adults make.
No, not at all.
So in that case, I want to make sure as an insurance agent that the children are protected at least long enough for them to be able to provide for themselves or be old enough to know who to go to provide for themselves.
Okay. Brandy, Brandy is still with us, y'all. Brandy is still here, so don't think Brandy has disappeared because she's still with us. I'm coming back. Can you tell us, Miss Juanita, a little bit about your journey with domestic violence? Me and Brandy, share that with us.
Sure. I married very young and was married to a young man his household knew nothing but daddy beating mama and making mama do what he wanted her to do. Therefore, he had a tendency to make sure his wife did what he wanted her to do. And if that meant slapping her around, then he would do that. If it meant that I was just not able to get out of the house for the day, he'd do what he had to do to make sure I was locked in.
Oh, wow.
So it's very easy for me, as I said earlier, if I'm to sit and analyze anything with a client, it's easy for me to pick up on that vibe. When she's unable to answer my questions and he has to answer. I do have a problem with being able to conceal it, so I'll say things like, would you let her answer, please?
Yeah. You pick up
Right. So it's not an easy thing to have to see once you've experienced it. But as my experience, as the former guest spoke earlier, I married real young. And in our household, that's what you did. You listened to what the husband said.
Yeah.
And you were a woman, which meant nothing. And you spoke only when you were told you could. So it was always your fault.
Yeah.
You know,
And
you didn't cook the right kind of food that day. You burned it, or you whatever set the mood for them to be upset.
And when we talked earlier, we're both from Louisiana.
That's right.
So that mentality, Louisiana mentality is slightly different.
Yes.
From the
Yes,
city.
and my parents
Slightly
were
different.
sharecroppers,
Yeah, and if you were married young back then, you better know, if you know how to cook,
Yeah.
you probably not gonna be married.
Very long, right?
You're very young.
Right.
I wanna ask Miss Brandy here, what did you think about when I said 1920? They consider that as wife beating, and all states made it illegal. But not until 1970, they consider it as a serious crime. Now we're in 2018, and you hear more and more, a whole lot more about domestic violence now. Do you think they need to revisit the law on domestic violence and make some changes?
Well, everything needs to be changed at one point. I mean, that's just true. That's my
Yeah,
2
duh.
cents when it comes to the law. I mean, but we have definitely came a long way. I think it is a lot better in 2018 because we are made more aware due to social media and things like that. 1920, when that happened, when those statistics was given, I was just still thinking though, even though it was illegal in 1920, I'm pretty sure they were still doing it. Like I still look at it like, definitely didn't come from the era from, the woman supposed to be in her place. But that's what I thought about when I heard it. It was like, oh, the woman, you stay there. And if you don't do it, it's a control.
Yeah.
In 2018, not so much now. The law is definitely better. You definitely have more resources to go to. You definitely have more people paying attention and being aware. Here in Harris County, we have a protective order court specifically for protective orders. That's exactly what that's for. That judge is very fair. She listens to both sides. She has granted a lot of protective orders for men and women. So like you said, it's not just women being
it's
abused.
not just women.
So definitely you start to see that more. Even in Brazoria County, you have a judge that listens specifically to protective orders too.
Okay.
And they're doing well at granting those. So definitely in larger cities, I think we're making it a focus. I think it's getting better, but we still need to keep fighting to make it great.
Oh, yeah. Most definitely. Miss Juanita, what made you decide enough is enough?
My children.
Like Miss
My
Hudson?
children, yes. I had 3 daughters. Actually, when I had 2, because I had, it was almost 10 years before I had my last child. And I decided, my main thing was I never wanted my children to be raised without their father. And like all the women, that's our first thought. We want our children to be with their daddy. And my thought was, well, why do they have to be away from their father? For me to be away from their father should not take them from their father. So I decided that I would, once I was divorced, go ahead and make sure that the father knew he could see his children whenever he wanted to see them.
Yeah.
As long as he just didn't come to my house. He had to let me know he was coming.
Yeah.
But I would allow him to see his children whenever. And then I learned that I needed that time too, so
Yeah.
I would help him get his children on his weekend or his time, And, and because of that, I think I raised 3 healthy young women who now says, wow, Mama, how did you do that?
I had a pleasure of meeting one of them today.
And, it's the fact that I had in my mind this would still work. And I know we can't continue to live this way. And I was at a point where I was going in and out. I would move to my mother's house and in a day or 2 come right back. And this had to stop.
Yeah.
And I decided, let's just make a pact and make it happen. It was a pact with myself, but I did it.
I love it. I love it.
I do like that. Make a pact with yourself.
Yeah, I made a pact
And
with
that probably is
myself.
the best pack to make one. So we've got educated segment on insurance, life insurance for if you're in a domestic violence situation, the law, but also most importantly, make a pact with yourself. Because you won't lie to yourself. Well, hopefully you won't lie to yourself. So
and you have to carry it out.
yeah, you have to carry it out.
So every time I'd get upset with him about something or not showing up or whatever, I remembered my pact and said, well, what are you going to do? Get in that car and take him to him. Yourself.
I love it. I love it.
You have to carry it out.
I want to thank both of you ladies for being here with me for this segment. We're going to go to another quick break, and we're going to be back with Miss Tamisha Hunter, and she's going to peel some masks off on the domestic violence for me. So we'll be right back.
Hello, hello, hello. I just stopped by to remind you of how fabulous you are, how wonderful you are, how God made you to do wonderful and miraculous things in the world.
And we're back. We're about to peel off another mask on domestic violence, and I want you to help me welcome my good friend, Miss Tamisha Hunter, the founder of Women Like Us, all the way from Dallas, Texas. So thank you so very much, because y'all are under flood siege out there.
All up under the water.
But I'm glad you made it, and thank you for being here with me. And you know, me and you, you were on my Girl Power show.
Yes.
You don't sugarcoat nothing.
No.
If you guys in the studio audience get up and y'all start shouting and running around the audience, it's okay, because she will do that kind of stuff to you. So we just going to jump in, like I've been just jumping in. So I'm going to ask you the same question. Did you see early signs on when you were dating this person? And I know you were young then, too. Tell us how old you were.
I was 19, and no, I did not see the signs because I thought that that was love at the time. As I was growing up, I was rejected from my dad, and my mom had told me that I wasn't supposed to be here. So I didn't know where I fit in. So I allowed the streets, in my sense, to teach me how to love. So I looked for love in all the wrong places. So when I ended up getting this relationship with him, that was his way of expressing love. But because I didn't know what love looked like, I accepted it.
Explain to us, because I think a lot of people don't really understand the type of fear when a woman is in that situation, that we have to then change ourselves of who we really are. Can you explain to us the level of fear that a woman in a domestic violence situation deals with?
Well, I can just speak with me for myself because all domestic violence relationships are different. All women experience different things. For me, the fear was I allowed him to define me. I allowed him to take what little young adulthood I had away. So as I grew into womanhood, I didn't even know what that was at that time because I was fearful of myself. I didn't have a voice. I didn't know how to live. I didn't know how to fight for myself at that time because I allowed him to do the fighting. I allowed him to just pretty much direct everything in my life because, again, I thought that's what love was. I thought that by me allowing him to control me in that sense, that, hey, oh, I'm getting taken care of. I can get anything I wanted, when I wanted, and how I wanted it. And then not to mention, because I was in that drug life as well, because he was a dope dealer. I'm just keeping it real. I'm not going to try to do no dictionary type name. He was just a dope dealer. He sold drugs, and anything that we wanted, I can have. And the fear of it was because the police knew him as a drug dealer, and they also knew him as an abuser. But they didn't care about him being the abuser. All they wanted was him to be on the drug life. So I was fearful for the police because you didn't care anything about me either. So I felt like I didn't have anybody that can protect me during that time. I didn't have my family to protect me. I didn't have the police to protect me. My friends left me because they knew that if he knew that they were talking to me, that it would be an issue. I couldn't even go outside to check the mailbox. If I checked the mailbox and someone told him, he would come home off the streets just to fight me, just to beat me. So I was afraid to go in the kitchen and cook if I wanted to. Anything that I wanted to do, I was afraid to do it. So I can't speak for other women in their life but for me, I was fearful in every area that you could imagine possible think of as you growing up to be a woman.
Okay. So like I explained to, and I've said this to you, and you've been on one of my other shows before, I take off my mask. So I'm going to take off a little mask today. So back in 1995, I technically was told, your mama my car was broke at that time. Your mama doesn't need to fix your car. You'll be dead on Valentine's Day of 1995. It's 2018. Isn't it 2018?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still here. So I was like you, I can relate to that story because back then when I was younger in my 20s, I was new to Houston, naive. I can say I was naive. I dated people that sold dope, drugs. I did that back in the day when I was 20. You know, I guess back then it was cute. I guess I'm gonna use the term cute.
It was.
So I was introduced to this individual and we started dating. I think he was slightly like younger than me. And everything was okay in the beginning. And then all of a sudden, we can be on the phone having a conversation, decent conversation. And the next thing you know, he done put some other people on the phone. I don't know when you dial these people in. You put some other people on the phone. You're telling them where I work. They can go to my job and do whatever they want to do to me. And again, he told me, your mom doesn't need to fix your car. You'll be dead on Valentine's Day, 1995. So for me, I cried. I would be on three-way crying like a 2-year-old kid and terrified because it was just that fear and the anxiety. And then the conversation would go from just craziness, then it'll go back to a normal conversation. Like it's like we never had this. And I'm trying to, who is on the phone? And one day I just said, you know what? I don't even know if Ray Charles' movie had came out yet. I just said, do what you do. If you gonna kill me, just kill me. Because I'm tired of calling and checking in. Because I had to call when I woke up in the morning. I had to call before I left for work. I had to call when I got to work. I had to call while I was on my break. I had to call when I got home. I just got up one day and just said, forget it. If you're going to kill me and this is the path that I have to go at 20-some years old, I'm just going to go that path. Because I was tired of living in that fear and under that confinement.
Well,
like
for you
were
had to call. I couldn't come out the house.
And you couldn't even
I couldn't go out the house. We lived in hotels. I couldn't come out the hotel room. I was homeless. Wherever we stayed, I could not come out unless he gave me permission to come out. And if I did come out, and again, like I said, he found out, it wouldn't matter. He would come, and we got kicked out of every residence we lived in. Hotels, rent properties, it did not matter. Got kicked out of a car, and it was my car. So who does that?
Who does that?
How do you do that? But that was part of, and then the fact you said he was younger than you, he was younger than me. And then for the fact that I did grow up in a strong black woman, single family home, and my mom was strong, and she didn't communicate, but I knew she loved me, but the communication wasn't there. So again, I didn't know. And I'm like, Tamisa, what is you doing? Why is you continue to put yourself in this? And I think for me, when he hit me upside the head
that's
with
what I was
that,
gonna ask you. What was your breaking point? Because I know a little bit about it. What is your breaking point? Give us your breaking point that gave you the power to walk away. Because I know a little bit of it. So I'm gonna go ahead.
when he hit me up behind my head with a 2x4, I got 32 stitches. Was in the emergency room, and the lady said, when are you going to leave? So while they're there putting stitches in my head, and that I'm past it, but just the thought of you laying there with stitches going in your head, and he's standing over there like, you better not say a word, and that fear. I can't do this no more, and I'm not gonna do it anymore. So when I left, we went back to the hotel room because we didn't have a place to stay. Holiday Inn to be exact. You probably have to edit that out. And I was sitting there, I had this white scarf on my head, and I was the blood was coming out. And to this day, I still have this scar on the back of my head. And he left to go back out in the streets, and I was sitting there in that room, and I was like, God, if you love me, I need your help, because I can't do it anymore. And then I didn't have a place to go. I didn't know who to call because I left my family for him. And we stayed in the hotel for probably about a month, and I got the stitches out, and I was trying to leave. And he caught me trying to leave. he hit me again on the side of my face. This scar, you can't see it because of the makeup. It kiloed up, and I was like, that's 2 marks. That's visible. And I'd be damned if you hit me again. So I decided that I was gonna leave. That night I didn't care who, what, or when. We tore that house up. We tore every window, every glass, everything. And I remember busting out the windows of the car, threatening him. I think God gave me some type of strength that I didn't even know I had. Because, baby, I knocked him upside his head so bad.
That's that strength to survive.
That was what that was.
That was that strength to survive.
Yeah.
You was determined to survive.
Baby, yes, it was. And I took out walking to my mom's house. Blood everywhere, all on me, just dripping. Cars passing, didn't stop, because everybody in the town knew that all we did was fight. So they didn't want to help. And so from that day on, I said I would never, ever again allow another man to lay his hand on me. And I would speak my truth. It took me a while to get past because I was embarrassed. Because, you know, sometimes people judge you for staying. But you can't judge me if you have not been in the gutter with me. And I tell people all of that all the time. Every woman's situation is different.
Yeah.
Until you hit that, receive that lick that I received that had pain going from my head down to my toe, you can't say you stupid from being there. No, I'm stupid from listening to you. I had to get that strength to walk away, and I did. And I was single for about 8 months, and I kept telling myself I'm not, sort of like Miss Juanita said, that pack. I would not do it. And you know, God blessed me with a wonderful husband of 21 years, and I wasn't searching for love, but love found me. And that when I really believe that God gave me that grace when I asked him for that help, because that help, he helped me realize that this is how you deserve to be loved.
I know. I know y'all want to shout, because I told y'all she's like, I don't even know where to go from here. I'm gonna say this. I am so glad that you made that pact, and you spoke to God, and you were able to say enough is enough. I got to get out of this situation. So I am so glad for that. Tell us what's going on quickly with women like us. What's going on? Because you out of Dallas.
Yes, I am.
So give us a little update on what's going on with women.
Well, Women Like Us is a nonprofit organization where we focus on helping women be who God designed them to be through fashion, through whatever the case may be. And then also have programs for like domestic violence, surviving sexual abuse or anything like that. So we have a conference that we're preparing for in 2019, which I'm trying to get just women of any women. Let me back up. Women Like Us is what it's called. Women Like Us, everyday women, regardless if you're a CEO, a homemaker, or someone that works at McDonald's. It doesn't matter. You a woman. You have suffered. You have received. You have been abused. You've been loved. You've been rejected. It doesn't matter. It's just everyday women coming together, loving on each other, being in a safe haven with each other, experiencing love, knowing that sisterhood and that greatness of the hey, I can overcome whatever the situation may be. So we're planning this conference for next year, and I hope that all you guys can attend.
Well, she already called me and told me. She didn't ask me. She's basically, I need to know what position you want to play, because I need for you to be there on this date. Yeah, on my lunch at that. So, so I'll be there. But I want to say thank you very much for you and your family, because your husband, ride or die.
Ride or die.
And we're back with my last guest, maybe. I don't know yet. I might be trying to spin some stuff around in the last few minutes I have. But I want you guys to help me welcome Ms. Deidre Williams to the show. Thank you for being here. I know it's been a long day. I want to, she's going to peel back some of her masks on domestic violence as well. One thing I noticed when you provided me your information, you said living in two prisons, your own mind and your marriage. And then you also said you were broken long before you were ever beaten. Explain to me what you mean by all that.
Basically, it's like with any situation, you know, in life we live and we learn. But for me, the situation was when I finally got out of that marriage and when I left that situation, in order for me to heal, I had to go through a process of what was my role in this? What took place within me that allowed me to even be in that situation? And so I had to do a lot of self-reflecting. And in that process, I had to go back to, okay, where did this hurt originate? What was the cause of it? And so when I say that I had to deal with two prisons, never been to jail in my life, but yet I live with two prisons, one from childhood and dealing with, like a lot of women, just dealing with issues of abandonment from my father not being there when my parents divorced, and sometimes feeling disconnected from my mom. We have a better relationship now, but still for a child, and you feel that disconnect and you have to go through those things and you live with those things, and it taunts us. You know, so I learned early, at an early age, to start wearing masks. Yeah. Because people that knew me as a child and knew me growing up, they always thought I was this outgoing cheerleader, track star, basketball, you know, student council. I was that kid who was involved in everything, but at the same time, I was shielding it. I was shielding those things. I was shielding the hurt. I was shielding the fact that my dad wasn't there. And I learned to wear masks. So I hid it all behind my activities. Yeah. I hid it all behind the things that I was involved in. And for my, and to say, you know, for my marriage, my first husband was a cheater. So he was a cheater, and I felt that was emotional abandonment. And all it did was initiate a fear of failure for me. And because of that fear of failure and having to admit, well, this didn't work out, I internalized that. And in the process of internalizing that, well, when I married my second husband, who was the abuser, I had this mindset of this has got to work, otherwise I'm going to fail again. So I had to think about the fact that I was dealing with childhood hurt, the fact that I was dealing with low self-esteem, the fact that I was dealing with depression that I had hidden for so long. Well, when the abuser came along, it just made it easier to hide it. So instead of hiding it behind activities that I was doing in school, I hid it behind smiles and laughter, and people that I worked with never knew the things that I was going through because I was always that person who was trying to make everyone else happy. So wearing masks became an everyday thing for me. It was easy. So, you know, whether we change our hairstyles, we change our clothes.
You just change up the mask.
I just changed the mask.
Yeah, I do. I have a lot of them that I wear. A lot of them, but that's a whole nother show. Let's go right into, because you shared with me the day your husband tried to kill you. Share that with everybody else.
Yeah. For me, you know, most people can analyze their relationship with their abuser and they can establish a cycle. You know, okay, he's happy for 10 days. He starts getting upset for the next 5 days. You know, by day 20, he's about to hit you.
And then you program yourself to try not to get hit.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, in my situation, however, it was different because it wasn't until later that I found out that my ex-husband was bipolar. And because he was bipolar, you never knew which way this manic depressant stage was going to go. And along with being bipolar, he was an addict. So you got two negatives stacked on top of one another. So that day was no different from any other day. You know, he woke up in a decent mood, actually, which was surprising. But if anyone had ever asked me if I thought that day could have possibly been the last day of my life, no, I would not have thought so. But I had been at work and I came home that evening, and I don't know what triggered his attitude for that day, because like I said, he was different. His were just sporadic at times, and he got upset about something and wanted to leave. And I was okay with that because I was almost to that point, like everyone else says, you get tired. When you can't figure out what the cycle is, when you can't figure out what the triggers are, you get tired. And when you start to get tired is when you start to look for the out. And he wanted to leave, and I was like, great, this is my opportunity. Well, it wasn't so great because in the process of me agreeing with, okay, fine, oh, well, that angered him. what? I wasn't supposed to want him to leave.
Yeah.
I wasn't supposed to agree with him wanting to leave. So here at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he's upset, mad. We've been arguing for hours now. And he just decides that, oh, well, I'm going to take your car and I'm going to go back to East Texas where we're originally from.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm starting a new job the next day. I was supposed to start a new job the next day. So I couldn't let him take my car. He was like, well, you're going to have to get in the car and you're going to drive me there. So I wake my 7-year-old son up, put him in the back seat with a blanket and a pillow, and we get in the car and he drives the hour and a half, because at the time I was living in Dallas still. He drove the hour and a half back to East Texas. And something in him clicked and he said, I'm going to kill you. And just in the midst of the argument, my son's still in the back seat sleeping, and he had on a hoodie. And he took the string out of the hoodie and wrapped it around my neck. I was sitting in the passenger. Yeah, to strangle me as we're going down the highway. I had a panic attack and I passed out. So at some point he pulled over or whatever, because I woke up in the trunk of the car. I woke up in the trunk of the car, and we eventually made the drive to East Texas, and he had taken my son to his mother's house. I didn't know where my son was, because when I woke up in the trunk of the car, we were in a wooded area out in the middle of a field.
Because you told me that your son, as little as he was, he knew my mom is in the trunk of this car. How am I going to get my mom out the trunk of the car? And he was 7.
He was
at
7.
the time.
He was 7. And, you know, out in this field, and there are no houses around, there are no buildings around. All I see is trees, trees. And just the anxiety, just the fear. And I remember coming to just long enough, but then as he strangled, I lose consciousness. And I'm back in the trunk of the car. And I guess he's trying to figure out what he's going to do with me. So he drove back to pick up his mother was calling him, because my son explained to her what was going on. So she called him, and my son was talking to him. And that's why I said, it doesn't matter how old you are, it doesn't matter how young you are, God can use anyone at any point to get a message across.
Yes.
And because
For sure.
Because I had made sure that my kids were in church, there was enough God in my son that he was able to speak to that demon that had possessed him and told him, God loves you. Why would you do this to my mommy? She loves you too. And in knowing that, you know, I couldn't help, I thought about the story of Saul, how David was able to soothe him with music and to soothe him with talking. And God used my son on that day
To soothe him that day.
to soothe him. And it says, at the name of Jesus, demons must flee.
Yeah.
So at that time, that demon released him, and he let me out of the trunk.
And that was a blessing, because he was determined
Yes.
to get rid of you that day.
Yeah, he was
I
determined.
really believe that he was determined to get. What would you, one thing can you try to do to start to free yourself? Because I think with a lot of women, it's everybody's different circumstances, which we've heard all day today. It's different. Everybody is in a different, going down a different road with domestic violence.
Right.
So what is one thing that a woman can find to free themselves? I know Miss Juanita talks about that pat. I'm going to always remember that.
Right.
So what is one thing that to try to start to free yourself? Because it's not always easy.
The very first step, I believe, it's internal. It's internal. The Word of God says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. That's the first place. It has to start within our own minds. We have to be able to see ourselves free. We have to be able to see ourselves wanting better. We have to feel ourselves being loved. We have to, first of all, learn to love ourselves and learn that we're worth being loved.
Yeah.
Because that's where it initiates. Because we were lacking love from a parent, a father, a sister, brother, whatever the case is, it started someplace before the abuser.
Most definitely.
So we have to learn to internalize these things and think of what is going on within us that even allowed us to be in that position. So for me, it was learning to love myself, learning to just accept the fact that I am worthy. I am worth more than what I was being dealt. I'm worth more than what I was being given, that I deserved better. So the first step is just seeing yourself better, seeing yourself deserving more, and seeing yourself where you want to be. Because when you start to think, you know what, this is not for me. When you start to see yourself in a better position, you think it, then you want it, you desire it, and you'll take those steps to obtain it. And it's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight, because for me, you know, there were other situations, and I had to just finally get myself to a point where I said, enough is enough. And I wasn't going to keep just accepting whatever he gave.
Tell us about, tell me a little bit about your goals and the things you have set forth that you want to do to continue on educating women with domestic violence and so forth. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, first of all, like I said, I just really had to go through a healing process for myself, because there is nothing worse for a woman who has been a victim or is being victimized to get advice from someone who's still dealing with hurt. To get advice from someone who's still in a hurt place themselves. So you've got to allow yourself to be healed. So that was my first step, is I wanted to be healed because I knew God allowed me to go through those things so that I could share my testimony with others, so that I could be a vessel where others would say, you know what, she survived that, I can do it too. To give them an out. You know, someone to see that actually went through it, survived it, and lived to tell the story. Because unfortunately, there's so many that don't.
No, they
We read about it, we hear about it way too often, where they don't have an opportunity and that they never got the help. So my goal is to help other women, to empower other women, to encourage other women, and to motivate them. I'm a licensed minister, and so of course I'm always talking to people. Ministry is in the streets.
Oh, yeah.
Ministry is not behind those 4 church walls. Ministry is in the streets. It's about coming in contact with people on an everyday basis who just need to hear our stories. They need to know our testimonies. The biggest thing is that most people, because we live in a society that says, you can't tell people you went through that. Because we live in a society that thinks everything has to be perfect.
I hear that all
No
the time.
one wants to share their stories. No one wants to be transparent. But God didn't call us not to be transparent. We were brought here for a purpose. And my goal is to live up to that purpose that God has put me here for. And if me going through those situations was for me to be able to share with someone else, for me to be able to help someone else, then that's the purpose that I want to live up to. So in doing so, I've written my first book that will be released in about 4 weeks. And that's called Will to Live. But I've already started working on my second book, which is dealing with my story about domestic violence. So writing books, speaking engagements, things of that nature, just to encourage people along the way.
And empower, most definitely. Well, I want to thank you for being here with us today. It meant a whole lot to me, and you've taken off the mask and you showed different perspectives and the journey that you had to walk through. And how many years were you married to him before all this happened?
8 years.
8 years. 8 years. So thank you so very much for being here with us today. When we come back, I still got a few minutes. So I've put a little twist on this. So when we come back, I have like a little surprise guest that's going to pop in, and we're going to talk, and I'm going to spin the mask a little bit more on domestic violence before we close out the show. So hang tight, just a few more minutes with me, and I'll be right back with my surprise guest.
Welcome to class.
And we're back. Now, I did say my last guest before, but I had to spin it just a little bit. And with removing the mask on domestic violence for me, I felt that it needed to be showed full circle to the best of my ability to making that happen. So to close out my show, I have one of my previous guests, Miss Juanita. Her daughter is here. So we're gonna get domestic violence from a family member's perspective. so we can get an idea and even an understanding from that angle of it on how they watch their loved ones go through this, dealt with it, how if it has affected them as being an adult now. So I want you to help me welcome this time my last guest as we spin this a little bit. How are you today? I know I called you out real quick. I called you out real quick on this to do this. So thank you for being here with me today. Tell everybody, what's your name? Tell us.
My name is Maria Monroe.
Maria. You came today to sit in on the show.
Support my mom.
With your mom, to support your mom. And I drew you. I do stuff like that. So I drew you in. But thank you for coming. We talked briefly, and you said you were 8 at the time. This was your mom. Now, your mom told us earlier about her first husband. But this was your stepfather, and you were 8 years old.
Around 8. I think I
Right.
may have been a little bit younger, but yeah, around.
Around 8 years old.
Yeah.
So what do you want to share that you remember?
I remember seeing bodily fluids fleeing. I remember seeing her cry. I remember hearing her yell. I remember hearing flesh on flesh. I remember hearing her body being slammed into the wall. And at such a young age, I didn't understand or know because, you know, what happened in her first marriage with my father, I was so young. And he hurt her, but he never hurt us. So it wasn't, I didn't know what that was. I didn't understand. I heard them yelling. I heard her saying, you know, you just hit me. One time we were in Houston. We were at a hotel. Another time we were at his house in our small town. It was frightening. It was scary. I mean, I'm getting scared, nervous just talking about it because I remember those emotions at that age. I didn't understand or know
Really, what was
why.
going on?
Yeah, why or what to do, or, you know, I didn't understand, you know. So it was hard.
And once she left, and you, once she left that situation, and as you became a teenager, a grown woman, did that impact you? Because your mom is a strong woman. This is my first time meeting her personally, but from what I know of her previous, she's a very strong woman. So did that impact you with the situation she was in? Did that impact you in relationships that you tried to form with men, or how did that?
Very much so. I became anti-needing anybody, wanting anybody for a long time because I saw her, she had to do it by herself.
Yeah.
She didn't have help. She didn't have people, I mean, she's told me stories of family members saying to her, if you want to stay, I'm not going to help you anymore. Or I'm, you know, and she left, and she literally, like, they had a lot of, her and my father had a lot of property, and she left him with it, and she went and started all by herself. Yeah. And as an adult, and having property of my own, I'm like, what? Why would you? Who does that after all this work you put? You know. But she said, I don't want anything to do with it. You wanted to control me, so you're gonna have whatever you want. It's all yours now. And that was hard. Now I know. I didn't know then. But it taught me that I have to do for myself. That being said, I did not accept anything less than what I felt like I deserved. Because again, as I said, what happened between her and my father still brings me to tears because I love him. He is my father, and he was a good father to me. He was not a good man to her.
Yeah.
So I can separate the two, and I understand. I've been married now for 14 years. If he ever laid his hand on me,
You know what to do.
but he hasn't, and he wouldn't even think of it. But I learned anger and temperament that I have friends that they don't know those things. They don't know how to act out physically. And I would throw his phone or little things like that, because I remember seeing those things as a child and thinking, this is how you deal with conflict. And that's not healthy. And he taught me that. But he taught me that through a lot of patience.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, it taught me to be independent, and it made
Strong.
me, yeah.
And strong. That's a good thing. And I'm sorry for how some people will just say, we can't talk to you. We're not going to deal with this anymore because you just want to stay, but you stuck by your mom. You're here today with your mom, and that has made you a very strong woman, and you know the signs, like your mom talked about. So I want to thank you again, Maria, for being here with us today. I know I slipped you in. I know I slipped you in, but I wanted to show the family side, because I think a lot of times some women, they're looking at what they're in, but you have little kids that are watching, and our kids watch everything we do, and that affects them in some type of manner. It affects them. So I want to thank you so very much for coming in and sitting down and talk to me about that. But they're telling me that I have to wrap up because I went over my time just a tad. So I want to thank my studio audience for being here with me today. I want to thank my audience at home. If you need any information on any of the guests that was here today, you can contact the show at ourlifetvshow@gmail.com. Always follow the show on all the social media websites, the YouTube site, Monique.NWhite. And until next time, always empower and continue to remove your mask. See you next time.